Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, June the 22nd, 2020. It is currently 11:20 a.m. Central Time, and we're going to take some time to look at where we are right now. We're going to stop what we're doing. We're going to take some time. We're going to listen. We're going to read. We're going to consider. We're going to analyze. We're going to think to try to figure out where we are right now. Where are we? Where we are. That's the goal here. In fact, the goal here is not really to even ask the question, where are we? It's for me to do everything I can to try to state this is where we are as of right now. And the way we do that here and this is a part of the Theology Central podcast. The way we try to figure out, the way I tell you, the way I try to help inform you about where we are is by taking some time to read, to listen to some news clips, and just kind of discuss so that we have an understanding. All right. In fact, there's a very interesting Bible verse. You probably know it. You've probably have heard sermons preached on it before, but it's found in the book of 1 Chronicles. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. I want us to understand the times. I want us to have a firm grasp on where we are right now, because if we can understand where we are, then we may get some insight to where we are going. We may get some insight to what is coming. And then listen to me. The goal of understanding where we are, the goal of understanding the times is so that we can approach and deal with the issues that are happening around us from a spiritual perspective, from a biblical perspective, from a theological perspective. The goal here is not just to inform you, but it's to call you to, as a Christian, hey, how do we think about this biblically? How do we think about this theologically? How should we approach this? So I want you to understand the times so that we know what to do. I want you to truly, 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 truly understand where we are. And when I say where we are as of today, it's because we won't be, and this is just the way society works, where we are today, we're going to be somewhere else tomorrow because everything is moving. Nothing stops. Time doesn't stop. Change doesn't stop. Everything is moving. The better we can understand where we are right now gives us some idea of where we're going. And then that gives us an idea how to address it from a spiritual perspective. So I'm still trying to figure out how to kind of do these episodes. I mean, obviously the focus is the Theology Central podcast, but I need a way to be able to address multiple topics in one episode without sitting there going, how do I create a title that captures everything? Well, whenever you see a new episode of, where we are, whenever you see a new episode for where we are, you're going to know what date it's for, right? So that places it and it gives you a date stamp because I put where we are and then I give you the date. So that lets you know, and it lets you know what that episode's going to be about. It's going to be a survey of where we are right now of that date and trying to figure out where we are going. All right. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do this. I'm still trying to figure out the best way, but I needed a way to be able to address multiple topics. Because if I create a story, if I create an episode and I cover 4 topics, what do I call it? Right? How do I write a title that captures what all 4 things I'm going to be talking about? It's going to be impossible. So this is designed to give you, that's one of those episodes. He's going to talk about multiple things. He's going to tell me where we are and then try to give me some insight of where we're going and challenge me to think about it from a biblical and theological perspective. All right. So these are kind of the catch-all when I have a lot of things to talk about. All right. And the reason I did not make this a separate podcast is because, then I would have to be producing new content all the time. And the goal here is this just gives me, as I'm doing the Theology Central podcast, just gives me another way to still do the Theology Central podcast, but be able to accomplish this kind of programming. So I hope I hope it will be appreciated. I hope people will benefit from it. I really do. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And I thank you for your patience, and any feedback you can give me. Please email me at newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. So where are we for Monday, June the 22nd, 2020 at 11:26 a.m. Central Time? Well, this is something we definitely need to talk about. U.S. coronavirus death toll. Are you ready? The United States coronavirus death toll now surpasses 120,000. So over 120,000 people have now died in the United States of America alone. And as that has occurred, China and South Korea is working to contain new outbreaks. So here's where we are. The coronavirus has not gone away. It's not gone away. I know that there's almost this attitude like, it's over, we're done, we're going to move forward. No, we still have to remain vigilant. We still have to pay attention to what's going on. And what could happen moving forward? I don't know what could happen moving forward. I honestly don't know. I wish I could give a prediction. I feel like that at least at the federal level, they're going to be like, no shutdown. We've got to worry about the economy. Keep going. If we end up with another major explosion of coronavirus cases and people start dying at even a more rapid rate, do things start getting shut down? How could that affect your family? How could it affect your job? How could it affect your finances? You need to understand the times. You need to know what's going on. So 120,000 people now have died in the United States. China and South Korea work to contain new outbreaks. The coronavirus has infected nearly 8.8 million people as of Sunday and killed more than 464,000. So we're fast approaching over 500,000 people have died globally. We're fast approaching that. We're at 464,000 right now, but I think we'll get to 500,000 relatively quick. So this has not gone away. It's still a problem. Here's some of the story. This was published at 8:05 a.m. More than 120,000 people have now died from coronavirus in the United States, according to the NBC News tally, which shows that over 2.2 million people have been affected across the country. The grim figure was reached hours before President Donald Trump told a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that he wanted to slow the testing down. All right. But later he said he was joking. To be fair, I did hear Donald Trump say that. It sounded kind of like a joke. I just don't know if it's the right time to be joking. Hey, more and more positive. We're getting more and more positive. We're getting more and more positive cases of COVID-19. We need to slow the testing down, then we won't get so many positive cases. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was ill-timed. I don't know. But it sounded like a joke, to be fair. And I'm not obviously a President Trump fan, but I just want to be fair. The head of the World Health Organization warned on Friday that the virus's global spread is accelerating after a daily high of 150,000 new cases was reported last week. So the World Health Organization is saying that we're getting that is spreading and it's accelerating. Now, I don't know. Again, you can look at different charts, you can look at different statistics and kind of go, I don't know, but we need to be paying attention, all right? Worldwide, almost 8.8 million people have been infected with the respiratory illness as of Sunday and has killed more than 464,000, according to Johns Hopkins University data. The true number is thought to be much higher as many cases go untested. In China, officials said Sunday that 2.3 million people have so far been tested in the country's capital in an effort to contain a significant outbreak in Beijing after easing of lockdown restrictions. That seems to be what's happening. You ease the restrictions, the virus shows back up and starts spreading. So I don't know. How long do there's only so long you can keep everything locked down. I don't know. I know this. Whatever society, whatever the culture does at large, whatever governments do at large, you as an individual can still take precautions for yourself. You can still be careful with yourself. You can still make wise decisions for yourself. Medical aid teams from Wuhan, where the virus originated last year, arrived in Beijing late on Saturday in order to help carry out more testing, Chinese state media reported. There have been no new domestic cases in the city for 56 consecutive days. But since June 11th, the capital has reported 227 new cases. So they went a period with none, and then all of a sudden now here we go again. Nearby, South Korea continues to struggle to contain an outbreak resurgence that has some of the country's hard-won pandemic gains erased during social distancing rules as they were eased in April. You ease the rules, and then it comes back. South Korean health authorities on Sunday warned the nation of a new summer wave if the public fails to wear masks and keep social distancing, okay? South Africa continued to loosen lockdown measures under economic pressure, despite reporting nearly 4,000 more COVID-19 cases on Saturday. The country has reported more than 92,000 cases as of Sunday, according to the Africa Center for Disease Control, about 30% of the virus cases on the African continent. All right, we got Brazil. Let's see what else is happening. Italy, Europe. We just have it a lot of different places. And then here in the United States of America, we have a number of, just think about it. 120,000 people have died in basically 4 months. 120,000 people have died in basically 4 months. Now, you can downplay it. You can say it's serious. You can say it's a hoax. You can say whatever it wants. You're not going to think it's serious, not think it's a hoax until you have it or someone in your family has it or till someone in your family dies. And then all of a sudden your tone changes dramatically. So be careful running around making, outlandish claims. This is something we have to pay attention to. And we can debate all day whether government should or shouldn't. Take precautions for yourself. Be careful. Be wise. And it's perfectly okay. I had to go to the hospital the other day. Have a spot in the back of my head that was worrisome. Thought possibly, some kind of cancerous thing. And so I'm going to have it tested, but my doctor doesn't think that it's cancer in any way, shape, or form. But I'm going to be sent somewhere to get it tested to make sure everything is good to go. But when I got to the door of the hospital, it's like no entry beyond this point without a mask. Now, you can run around and say mask. I've seen all the debates on social media. Masks are useless. Don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Okay, hospitals still are requiring them, okay? So I put on the mask. I get in the elevator. I go up to the second floor, come off the elevator, take a right, and then there's a woman standing in the hallway saying, stop. And then she took my temperature, said my temperature was fine, put a little sticker on me, told me to keep my mask on. Then I proceeded down to the doctor's office. And when I walked into the doctor's office, everybody's wearing a mask. My doctor wore a mask. And so those are precautions. Now, you may think it's foolish. You may think it's dumb. You may think it's a grand conspiracy to destroy Trump. Whatever nonsense you want to run around with, there's a time and place to take some necessary precautions. Now, if you're in a very small gathering with a very small number of people and everyone's keeping their distance, then you can make – now, obviously, if there are rules in place and you're where you live and you need to follow those rules, don't try to make it – you don't need to fight a battle over the mask from a Christian perspective. That's the wrong battle to have. Now, if you're in a small gathering and your state or city no longer has a rule about wearing a mask, then you can make that decision on your own. If you want to wear one, wear one. If someone don't. You just got to make the best decision for yourself. All right. So 120,000 people. That's just crazy. Hang on. Some new headlines just popped up. 120,000 dead in America in 4 months. WHO warns of accelerating pandemic. That's the warning. And Arizona fights over masks. And the masks are becoming a political battle, and it's just crazy. Look, man, when it becomes a political battle, you have to know that that's not a good thing. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, let's transition. Speaking of COVID-19, speaking of masks, we all know that on Saturday, Trump held his rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, I had talked about the two things we needed to look out for. Violence and craziness, okay? There was some protest, but there appeared to be no violence, no craziness, pretty much uneventful, and that's a good thing. Now we have to wait and see. Most of the people there did not wear masks. Most of the people who entered the building did not wear masks because many of them felt that, wearing a mask somehow was a political statement against Trump. So Trump didn't have one. No one wore one. Now we wait and see. If there's no evidence of a major uptick and that this does not produce a major spread of COVID-19, then that's going to be used as an argument about, hey, we can start having large gatherings together again, and we don't have to worry about it. If all of a sudden this leads to a major outbreak of COVID-19 and they can trace it back to the Trump rally in Tulsa, then it's going to be used as an argument to keep everything shut down. So you definitely want to be paying attention to that. But something interesting happened at the Trump rally. All day on Saturday, I kept seeing reports that this is the largest crowd ever, right? And I kept seeing reports and photographs about how large the crowd was going to be. Trump had said that they had received a electronic request for tickets. Over 1 million people had put in requests for the tickets. They had an overflow area outside of the arena that Trump was supposed to go speak to first. Then he was going to move into the building to speak for an hour. Well, the overflow area had like 12 people standing there, and it got tore down, and Trump did not speak. Once you get into the arena was not packed, was not full, and it became a major news story over the weekend. Now, how do you interpret this? Some people were interpreting this, it's over. I think Joe Biden, I think he tweeted out that Trump is losing his supporters. They're abandoning him. And so some were like, this is it. He's over. He's finished. He's done. His supporters are not there. This is the end. Now, I don't know. You may want to interpret that way. It may be a sign. Maybe there were a lot of people who were worried about COVID-19 and didn't bother to show up because they were worried about COVID-19, even though they would maybe as a Trump supporter, they would never come out and specifically say that, but maybe they didn't show up for that reason. That's a possibility. But by Sunday, some things started circulating going, wait a minute, I think the reason people didn't show up to Trump is because of something that was happening on the media platform TikTok. Now, TikTok is a platform very popular among younger preteens and teenagers where they make short videos. A lot of music is becoming very popular because of its use in TikTok videos. And then it goes viral, and then the song becomes super popular. You can almost become a superstar overnight if you can get one of your songs to go viral on TikTok. So it's a place where a lot of young people are hanging out. Well, there were rumors that something was going on in TikTok leading up to Trump's rally. That TikTok users were putting out these videos saying, hey, request tickets to Trump's rally, and then don't show up. Request as many tickets as you can. And it appears that the young people were very clever. They would put out the video telling you how to request the tickets, how to do it, and then they would delete the video. Then they would put up another video saying, hey, request some more tickets, and then they would delete the video. And the reason they deleted the video is so that nobody from the Trump campaign would get wind of what was happening. So this was like this kind of underground grassroots movement by young people to tank the numbers for the Trump rally so that it would look really, really bad. Now, you can say it's foolish, it's dumb, whatever. It's very clever, but there's a lot of talk that maybe the reason those numbers were down had nothing to do with Trump supporters abandoning him, but maybe because of this TikTok idea. Here's one news report that aired this morning that picked up on that because this was a rumor going around by Sunday that TikTok was responsible. By Monday morning today, it seems like the news is now picking up the story. Listen carefully.
President Trump's campaign had high hopes for its rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma over the weekend. Ahead of the event, the president's campaign manager said more than 1 million people had expressed interest online. But the Tulsa Fire Department estimated that far fewer people showed up, about 6,000. As NPR's Bobby Allen reports, an effort to prank the campaign organized on the social media app TikTok may have played a role.
At a high school in Iowa, Mary Jo Laup directs musical theater production, and she's not a fan of President Trump. When she heard about Trump planning a campaign launch event in Tulsa, Oklahoma, she hatched a plan.
I have a friend who's been known to do the whole register for 2 tickets for the other guy's rally and not go, her own little mini rebellion. Nobody ever knows she does it, but she feels good.
And Laup thought she would feel good if she did the same thing. She jumped on TikTok, the favorite app of the kids at her high school, and issued a call to action.
I recommend that all of those of us that want to see this 19,000-seat auditorium barely filled or completely empty, go reserve tickets now and leave him standing there alone on the stage. What do you say?
And it caught on. Prominent TikTokers shared it. Fans of Korean pop with large Twitter followings boosted it. A day after making the video, 300,000 people had said they were interested in the event. The Trump campaign would go on to say that more than 1 million people had requested tickets. Steve Schmidt is a political strategist in Park City, Utah, who has worked on Republican presidential campaigns but strongly opposes President Trump. Schmidt was talking to his 16-year-old daughter, who told him, yeah, even I got a ticket to Trump's rally as a joke.
She goes, well, all the kids do. You know, everybody, like there's hundreds of kids who have probably thousands of tickets just in Park City. So it's all over TikTok.
At the Bank of Oklahoma Center on Saturday, Trump canceled plans to address an outdoor overflow section because there was almost no one there. Inside the arena, a crowd of people was surrounded by sparsely filled upper rafters. Tulsa city officials say the crowd was about 6,200 people. The Trump campaign told NPR that fears over the coronavirus and protesters is what really depressed turnout. The campaign says it didn't cap registration, and it was first come, first serve, saying the phony TikTok-fueled signups was not a factor in their planning. And it is true that online enthusiasm doesn't always translate into a large rally crowd, says Tim Fullerton. He's a former Obama presidential campaign staffer.
You know, you always get more RSVPs for an event than end up showing up. It's just the nature. It's called the flake rate.
The flake rate, a global pandemic, a massive online prank, a lot could have shrunk attendance. But Schmidt, the political strategist, says there is no doubt TikTokers duped the Trump campaign.
It was really an act of civil disobedience, of subversion by young people who understand the consequences and are appalled and disgusted by the comportment and behavior of this president.
Back in Iowa, Laup, who is 51, has become known as TikTok Grandma. She argues that it's not important to ever know for sure the extent of the online prank's impact.
Whatever the real reasons were, we'll probably never all know. It's probably somewhere in the middle of all of this that it was a little bit of everything that played in. But I do know that there are 15, 16, 17 on up to 24, 25-year-old kids that are saying, we did this.
Laup says that feeling will lead to more online activism by young people, including around get-out-the-vote efforts, at least for those old enough to vote. Bobby Allen, NPR News, San Francisco.
All right, there you have it. So was it young people who duped the Trump campaign? Seems like there's some strong evidence that it was. And you can have your own opinion about that, whatever. I mean, young people, I guess they're doing something with their time. Yes, no, you can have your own opinion. But I want you to know that for this reason. Don't then listen. Be very careful how we interpret the attendance at the Trump rally. Whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, you may not, if you're anti-Trump, you may not want to interpret that as, hey, that proves that everyone's abandoning Trump. Maybe not. And if you're pro-Trump, you may want to say, no, he's got all of his support. It was just, we were duped. I just think you need to be very careful. The numbers were what they were. I don't think we should try to interpret them right now. Time will tell how much support is still for Trump or how much support he has lost based off everything happening in the world. And speaking of everything happening in the world, let's transition to, well, some world news and a situation that you may not be aware of, but you probably should. Listen to this carefully.
Could Egypt and Turkey go to war in Libya? Egypt's president threatens to send in the army if Turkish-backed troops make more gains. How does that further complicate Libya's civil war? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. The battle lines of Libya's civil war are changing quickly. A few weeks ago, Khalifa Haftar's forces were on the outskirts of the capital, Tripoli. They'd fought a 14-month battle to remove the UN-recognised Government of National Accord, or the GNA. But the warlord's campaign failed, and he's been in retreat since. GNA troops turned the tide over the past month, reinforced by military support from Turkey. They pushed Haftar's fighters out of Tripoli's suburbs and several coastal towns in western Libya. And now they're heading towards Haftar's power base in the oil-rich south and east. The GNA forces are closing in on the city of Sirte and Jufra Air Base. Both are near oil fields that Haftar shut down earlier this year, cutting off billions of dollars of income. Haftar's foreign backers, Russia, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt, are watching closely. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi proposed a ceasefire earlier this month, but Turkish leaders dismissed it as an attempt to save Haftar following his battlefield losses. Sisi says the Egyptian army is ready to cross the border and intervene if GNA fighters attack Sirte.
If some people think they can cross the line in places that matter to us, in Sirte or Jufra, that's a red line. Any direct intervention from Egypt has now acquired international legitimacy, whether within the framework of the United Nations Charter or based on the sole legitimate authority elected by the Libyan people. The objective will be to protect and secure Egypt's western borders from threats of terrorist militias and mercenaries.
The government of National Accord has rejected Egypt's threats. Egypt's foreign minister says his country backs a political solution to the conflict. Malik Trainer has more from Misrata.
Libya's internationally recognized government, that's the GNA, denounced el-Sisi's remarks on Saturday, saying that this constitutes a threat to their national sovereignty and that is a threat to their national security. Now, I spoke to GNA commanders here on the ground, and they say that they are adamant about entering Sirte. They say that they want to liberate all of Libya from Haftar's control. They also say that their agreement with Turkey is a legitimate one. The GNA and Turkey signed a military and maritime agreement in November. This has helped the GNA in capturing Western Libya, retaking Western Libya from Haftar forces. And they want to continue on now to Sirte. And they say after that, towards the eastern oil ports. What we are seeing is a real effort from the GNA to continue on. They say that they will not accept a ceasefire until Haftar forces retreat from Sirte and from El Jufra, and they will not negotiate with Haftar.
Let's bring in our guest from London, Juma El-Gamati, Special Envoy of Libyan Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj to Algeria, Mauritania, Morocco and Tunisia. From Washington, D.C., Nabil Mikhail, political writer and a professor of political science. And here in Doha, Ibrahim Freihat, conflict resolution professor at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. A warm welcome to you all. I'd like to begin in London with Juma El-Gamati. In 24 hours, we've had el-Sisi threaten military action in Libya, and now the foreign minister suggests that there is a political solution to this. But we're also, whilst this is all going on, we also seemingly seem to be understanding Egypt's position a bit more, in that they seem to be drawing a red line within Libya and saying that Sirte should not be attacked. What's behind this Egyptian movement? What does it mean for Libya?
Well, first of all, I think the Sisi statement yesterday equates to a blatant interference in another country. And for him to say that there is a red line in the middle of Libya, 1,000 kilometers away from the Egyptian border, that the GNA forces should not cross, it almost equates to a declaration of war against another country. This is totally unacceptable. For him also to say that he's going to train and arm tribal militias that will be Libyan or Egyptian tribal militias, or perhaps Egyptian tribal militias from a Libyan origin, that to be the spearhead of any Egyptian force that will go into Libya equates to actually sponsoring militias and training and arming militias, which totally contradicts the narrative and the idea which Egypt has been selling over the years, that Haftar heads a professional army and that they are supporting a professional army in Libya. In other words, Egyptian here is advocating just another militia to be added to Haftar's many militias, local and international. So all that, and also for Sisi to say that he only recognizes the HOR, the parliament in Tobruk. It contradicts totally with the Skhirat agreement in 2015, which Egypt was a witness to and which Egypt supported. And the Skhirat Libyan political agreement advocated that there are three legitimate political institutions in Libya. HOR is one of them. There's also the State Supreme Council in Tripoli, and there's the GNA, which is the executive government or the presidential council, which leads the country. So in a way, Sisi is saying that he only recognizes one of them, and he does not recognize the GNA in Tripoli, does not recognize the other state council in Tripoli, which contradicts UN resolutions and contradicts what all the international community agreed to. So why is Sisi doing this? I think partly Sisi is just saber rattling. He's trying to appear to be tough and strong in Libya to actually possibly for local opinion consumption, because we know that Sisi has been appearing to be very weak vis-a-vis another crucial problem for Egypt, which is towards the south, which is with Ethiopia, and the fact that Ethiopia is building a huge dam called the Nahda Dam, which is going to affect the levels of water that flows through the Nile to Egypt, and is going to have grave consequences for Egyptian economy and possibly for the future of Egypt altogether. Sisi has
Juma,
been
let's bring in some reaction from Washington, D.C. We have Nabil Mikhail with us as well. Nabil, you've heard what Juma had to say. He says that this is against Libya's sovereignty. It's actually contradictory and perhaps even an act of war. What do you think?
Okay, thanks for the kind invitation. Greetings to you and to your distinguished guest and to the honorable audience. Okay, let us not remove Donald Trump from the picture. It's a very important situation. But you have to be considerate of many political facts. We are in the middle of a very tough economic crisis as a result of the coronavirus. We have millions of unemployed in America. The Mediterranean countries surrounding Libya, Italy, Spain, Greece, and France have lost also a great deal as a result of the virus. There is a 4-month period before the election, and Donald Trump wants to get re-elected. All these factors work together, not in harmony all the time, to make America on reserve, reluctant to endorse any strategic move based on the geopolitical realities of any situation, Libya included. So I think President Trump will try to freeze the status quo in Libya, not to support one part over the other, but because he does not want an Egyptian interference in Libya, because that could be a war. And second, also, he does not want to complicate the situation with Turkey. So in a nutshell, if President Trump hears what is going on now from the different sides around Libya, he would say no military intervention by any side in the conflict, whether his troops are deployed inside Libya or whether he has the logistics to move troops inside Libya. That's it.
Let's bring in Ibrahim Freihat here, who joins us.
Okay, I just wanted you to at least get this sense of what is happening. So I'll state it this way. First, as a question, could Egypt and Turkey go to war in Libya? Could Egypt and Turkey go to war in Libya? Those are three countries then you need to be paying attention to. Egypt, Turkey, and Libya, all right? Egypt's president threatens military intervention against Turkish-backed troops. So could Egypt and Turkey go to war in Libya? Here's a basic kind of overview. The battle lines of the war in Libya have shifted rapidly in recent weeks. Last month, renegade military commander Khalifa Haftar's forces were on the outskirts of the capital. So this is last month. The renegade military commander, and I'm going to hopefully get his name right, Khalifa Haftar's forces were on the outskirts of the capital, Tripoli, battling to remove the UN-recognized Government of National Accord, known as GNA. But the campaign stalled, and Haftar's forces have since been in retreat. right? So we go through that again. Last month, a renegade military commander, Khalifa Haftar, his forces were on the outskirts of the capital, Tripoli, battling to remove the UN-recognized government of national accord known as the GNA. But the campaign stalled. Haftar's forces have been in retreat ever since. Forces aligned with the GNA, boosted by military support from Turkey, are pushing towards Haftar's power base in the oil-rich south and east. Egypt, one of Haftar's foreign backers, has warned it could send in its soldiers if GNA-aligned fighters attack the strategic city of Sirte. Could Egypt and Turkey go to war and further complicate the Libyan conflict? Now, you heard some discussion there. What you were hearing was the inside story from Al Jazeera. It is a podcast you can subscribe to, and you can listen to the rest of that discussion. But the reason I do this is these are situations that are happening around the world. Nobody in America ever pays attention to them. We don't understand the times. We don't know where we are, right? Where are we? We don't know where we are. Here is where we are. This is happening. And you hear Trump's name being mentioned, what Trump may or Trump may not do. Okay, let me translate that. America involvement, either politically and hopefully, maybe strategically, maybe financially, and hopefully not militarily, but that's something that we need to be paying attention to. There's always these little situations developing around the world, and sometimes we don't pay attention to them. And then all of a sudden they explode. And then once they explode on the national headlines, then all the Americans throw out their opinions on social media, demonstrating they don't really understand the situation. Something happens in Syria. Americans always think they know what they're talking about, and they usually can't explain the Syrian conflict to you if they try. They wouldn't even know where to begin. So pay attention to what is happening in the world around you. Now, let's move back. So now let's move away from Turkey, Egypt, and Libya. Let's move back to the United States of America. We know recently the Supreme Court passed a decision dealing with discrimination against, LGBTQ, homosexual, transgender, and this has sparked a lot of dispute and debate, and everyone seems to have a perspective. The other day, as I was in my car driving to the church, I heard a perspective on Christian radio. I thought I would play some of that audio for you now, and we'll discuss it. All right, let's listen carefully.
Does truth exist?
Because you have faith, does that make this book true?
Does God exist?
So when someone says there is no truth, if you apply the claim to itself, what should you say? Is that true? They don't think Christianity's true. They're talked out of it. You know why they're talked out of it? Because they've never been talked into it.
Cross-examining skeptical and atheistic views. Welcome to Cross-Examine with Dr. Frank Turek.
What does sex mean, according to the Supreme Court?
Now, I'll stop right there. I apologize. That thing is loud. I always joke that the Catholics, their volume is so low. I guess in Protestant Christian radio, they're like, turn that volume up. Okay, that thing is loud. I apologize. But after he gets done with his music, maybe it'll kind of level out, and I apologize. But again, this is podcasting on a shoestring budget. Is that the phrase? Okay. So yeah, here we go.
Yeah, you were probably wondering where I was going with that. The Supreme Court just had a decision this past week. What does it mean to the country? What does it mean to Christians? What does it mean to human rights? We're going to talk about that today. In fact, I've just written a column. It's on One News Now. It's on stream.org. It's on townhall.com. It's on our website, crossexamine.org, and a few other sites. The title is 5 Casualties of the Court's LGBTQ ruling, or LGBTQ sex ruling. Got to get all those letters in there. What was this decision all about? How did the court arrive at this decision? And in fact, after I go through some of these casualties, there are 5 of them, I'm going to try and explain how in 2020 this decision could be made It goes all the way back to Aristotle. Actually, all the way back to Adam and Eve, but Aristotle will be our key figure here that we're going to look at a little bit later in the program, so don't go anywhere. And let me just start out by pointing out that there are 5 casualties. There's more than that, but 5 casualties that I could fit into 1,200 words for a column about this ruling. And what sex now means, according to the Supreme Court in civil rights law, is it means sexual orientation or whatever gender you think you are. That's the result of this Supreme Court decision, Bostock versus Clayton County. And the person who wrote the majority opinion is Justice Neil Gorsuch. Oh, he was supposed to be a conservative, remember? Well, here are some problems with the ruling. The first problem, or the first casualty, I should say, is you and me, we the people. Because if you think you have the ability to govern yourselves through your elected representatives, the United States Supreme Court just made a mockery of that constitutional principle again. They've done this before. You know, you can work to elect the right people, pass the right laws, and then you'll just see a handful of unelected lawyers on the Supreme Court nullify or replace your laws, the ones that you work for, with their own laws. That's what the 6 justices did this week. They changed the 1964 civil rights law into a law that they desired, despite the fact that the very changes that they made, the Supreme Court made, have been rejected by Congress in recent years. So just like that, sex no longer means biological sex, but it could also mean sexual orientation or whatever a person thinks their sex is at the time. Now, Justices Alito and Thomas wrote a dissent, as did Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Alito and Thomas wrote this. They said there's only one word for what the court did today: legislation. They went on to say, a more brazen abuse of our authority to interpret statutes is hard to recall, unquote. Now, what does this all mean? The court is legislating from the bench. The court is changing their own, or changing the laws of the United States by their own preferences. Now, many might agree with the result of this particular decision. It's going to have some big negatives I'm going to talk about here in a minute. One of them is they're usurping the will of the people. But the means by which this result was achieved should disturb everyone who's an American. Why? Because it strikes at the very heart of our Constitution and our rights as people to govern ourselves. It's a complete injustice for judges to impose their legislative will on the people. Look, if they want to change the law, if a judge wants to change the law, then he has to do what any other citizen has to do. He's got to convince his fellow citizens to go through the difficult legislative process to get the law changed. To merely impose his or her will on the people is what we call tyranny. But that's what's going on in our country. It's been going on in this country for a long time. And it's what frustrates so many people, because they work hard to put laws into place, and then justices come along and say, no, we don't like your laws. We're going to put our laws in place. That is not representative democracy, ladies and gentlemen, or a representative republic. That's being ruled. That's 5, well, in this case, 6 people, 6 unelected people ruling over 335 million. You want to change the law? Go through the legislative process. So the first casualty in this decision is we the people. The second...
Now let's stop right there. I want to make sure I drive this point home. From a Christian perspective, this is very, 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 very important. I want you to listen to me. In society, societal morals change. Laws change. Laws are circumvented. You have a law, your Supreme Court can get involved. It doesn't matter how it happens. Things will constantly change in the world. That's why, as Christians, our hope cannot be in political, it can't be in judicial, can't be in legislative, it can't be in any of those forms of government, it can't be in any of those means. No, well, our only hope is something that is eternal, that is fixed, that is immutable, that is God, His word, His morality. We have to hold to something that is sure. It doesn't matter what the government says, doesn't matter what the government does, doesn't matter what if the government wants to call good evil and evil good, doesn't matter. God's word stands and will abide forever. Our hope must be in Scripture. We must build our life on the Word of God. We must stand on that. We must hold that. We must proclaim that. And that must be the what we focus on. That must be what we stand on, because everything else is shifting sand. Everything else will change. And whether legally they did this the right way, and you can argue that it was a casualty to we the people, because it wasn't we the people, it was we 6 Supreme Court justices, and it seems basically reinterpreted and changed the original law to fit what they believe. They believe society was changing, and society was changing. They reinterpreted an old law to fit the change in society. But that just shows how it works in culture. Things shift, things change. Right becomes wrong, wrong becomes right. Up becomes down, down becomes up. Christians, stop. Don't look to that. Look to the Word of God. Memorize it, study it, love it, read it, share it, proclaim it, teach it, live by it. That's what we must be standing on. All right, let's continue.
And casualty, ironically, is women. Why women? Because Justice Gorsuch's opinion furthers the leftist claim that sex is defined not by biology, but by one's state of mind. Therefore, if a man thinks he's a woman, then the law must treat him as a woman. Although Gorsuch tries to deny this result in the opinion, he tries to say, well, this doesn't follow. No, it does follow. What Gorsuch has actually done is he's given legal grounds for biological men to gain legal advantage over actual biological women in the workplace, in the bathroom, and, of course, on the athletic field and other places. I mean, think about it this way. Ladies, you're at your job. You want a promotion, right? All other things being equal, do you think your employer is now going to promote you or the man transitioning to become a woman who now has heightened legal grounds as an even smaller minority to sue for discrimination? What is the employer going to do? The employer is going to protect him or herself and say, well, I'm not going to promote you. I'm going to promote this transgendered person, because if I don't, then I'm going to open myself up for a lawsuit. Ladies, do you want privacy and safety in the bathroom and showering facilities? What policy is your employer or your gym going to adopt? The common sense one, where biological men and women are separate, or the one that prevents a costly discrimination suit by inviting men into women's facilities? What's going to happen here? Women are now at a disadvantage because of this decision, because the court imposed their will on the nation. Also, the third group of people, or the third casualty in this decision, believe it or not, is LGBTQ people. You say, how can that be? This is supposed to help them, right? Well, yes and no. You'll see why no here in a minute. Because what Gorsuch has done, he's not just made it harder for women. His reasoning actually contradicts the very rationale for the existence of women and LGBTQ people that he's supposedly trying to help. How so? Because when someone identifies as a woman or a man or a lesbian or a homosexual, they are actually presupposing there is such a thing as objective biological sex. I mean, how can one have sex with someone of the same sex unless one can differentiate that person from the opposite sex? And how can a man transition into becoming a woman unless men and women actually exist? There's no way to transition from one to another unless you know what a man is, unless you know what a woman is. You see, the whole LGBTQ ideology presupposes the fixed genders. But according to Gorsuch, those fixed genders don't now necessarily exist, because if you in your mind think you're a woman when you're really a man, oh, well, you're a woman then. And that objective standard of biology goes away. And so does any rationale to say you're LGBTQ or man or woman. Because without the fixed genders, none of this makes any sense. Of course, contradiction was never a problem for the Supreme Court. They contradict themselves routinely. Now, Gorsuch asserts that either one's biology or psychology can determine one's sex. But if a person's subjective psychology usurps their objective biology, then there's no objective way of identifying anyone as a man, woman, or LGBTQ. Sex and sexual identity are just figments of the imagination. Much like Gorsuch's justification for his opinion. It's just a figment of his imagination. He's just making it up as he goes. This has no grounding in our laws. He's just making it up. You're listening to I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist with Frank Turek on the American Family Radio Network. You have questions, you can email questions. Just the email is hello@crossexamine.org, hello@crossexamine.org. And hopefully we'll get to that in a future program. But don't go away. We're back in just 2 minutes.
Now, I want you to think long and hard about what's going on there. Now, he's making some very interesting logical arguments, and I'm not going to unpack the logical arguments and how they basically, to make an argument that one can transition from one sex to another sex, you have to presuppose, and then there is an actual thing of there are actual males and females. And if you go through the surgery to change your body, then you're saying that the way you know you're a male or female is by changing your body to correspond to, well, a sex. You're presupposing then that there are actual male and females, and the reason you know the difference is because of their anatomy. And if you're going to transition, by transitioning, you're arguing that you have to change your body to conform to what a male or female is. Therefore, there are actual male and females. And so, begins to destroy the whole concept. But listen to me carefully. We are living in a culture now where sex is no longer defined by biology. Sex is now defined by your own mental, what you classify yourself as being. And if that's the case, and now if you argue against that, if that now can be considered discrimination or be considered something as wrong, then this is where Christian ministries, churches can find themselves in trouble, because we're going to continue to say a male is a male, a female is a female. That is determined by biology, anatomy, your genetic makeup. That is what you are. If you don't feel that way, we are sorry that you don't feel that way, and we think you need to actually get help. But and we don't need to be offensive. We don't have to run around and say, okay, you don't believe you're a male and you want me to call you a she. We don't have to sit there and try to be offensive and try to just say things just to say things. But we can, at a fundamental level, at the right time, in an appropriate time, in the right place, say, okay, I want you to understand this. I'm going to respect you as a person because I believe you're a person created in the image of God and you have value and there's a sanctity and a sacredness to your life. But I just want you to understand that no matter what pronouns you want me to use, that fundamentally, I still believe that you are what you were born as genetically, and then you can determine if okay, just out of respect, I'm not going to, I'm not going to make the fight here over pronouns, because what this person needs is not the correct pronoun. Make sure we get this correct. What the person needs is not the correct pronoun. What this person needs is not a correct understanding of law. What this person needs is not a correct understanding of gender and genetic makeup of a male and a female. What they need more than anything is faith in Jesus Christ and to experience regeneration and salvation, sanctification, and discipleship. That's what they need. So you need to put the focus on that. All right. Let's see some of the other things he had to say in regards to this issue. We're almost out of time, so let's listen to a little bit more.
Welcome back to I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist with Frank Turek on the American Family Radio Network. I want to give you a bit of a personal update. Thank you for praying for my family. My dad is in hospice, as you know, in Florida. I just returned this week to Charlotte. I'll be going back to Florida again soon. In fact, he's probably getting fairly close, but it's really hard to judge these things. He's about to get, and that's ultimately our goal anyway in God's time. So we wait on God for that, and he's 84 years old. He knows where he's going. One advantage, as you know, of having a terminal illness is that you can tie up loose ends and nothing is left unsaid. I mean, my dad and I have always had a good relationship. We've told each other we love one another a lot. And so we didn't need to tie up anything, but it still is a positive, or one positive aspect of this is that you can talk about any issue without it being awkward, really, because when you know the end is coming, it's time to put aside the trivialities of life and talk about what really matters. So that's one of the advantages of this. I also want you to continue to pray for Tim Keller, if you would, who has pancreatic cancer. Rush Limbaugh, who has lung cancer, as you know. In fact, David Limbaugh, Rush's brother, is on our board here at crossexamined.org. Wonderful man. He's written a column on what we're talking about today as well. You should check that out at townhall.com or stream.org. Today we're talking about this column, and this column I just wrote called 5 Casualties of the Court's LGBTQ Sex Ruling, and I'm going to expand upon it in this podcast, because 1,200 words, I couldn't say everything I wanted to say. I really want to get to the root of why decisions like this come in 2020 to our Supreme Court, how they can make decisions like this. What's the history of this? How did this happen? It goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, obviously, but also all the way back to a denial of Aristotle. You say, how does that? We'll get there. Just stick with me. We were talking of the 5 casualties, and just before the break, we were talking about the third casualty, LGBTQ people, because if you negate the standard of biology for men and women, you've negated the rationale for men and women and LGBTQ as well. In fact, that's why some lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and feminists, for example, like J.K. Rowling, I think her name is, she wrote all the Harry Potter series. She came out with a recent 3,600-word essay called J.K. Rowling Writes About Her Reasons for Speaking Out on Sex and Gender Issues. She, unlike so many in our culture, will not back down when she gets pushback from the transgender ideology people. She goes right back at them, and she wrote a pretty elegant 3,600-word essay on that. You can see it linked in my column. And there are people who identify as LGBTQ, particularly the L, the G, and the B, who in recent years at the Heritage Foundation had a kind of a powwow, a panel discussion, if you will, at the Heritage Foundation, and Ryan T. Anderson actually chaired this panel, and you can see their hour or so long conversation in the link from the column that I wrote, 5 Casualties of the Court's LGBTQ Sex Ruling. You can see that entire discussion they had, and these are people that don't agree with the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, on virtually anything except transgender ideology. Because if you say there are no fixed genders, LGBTQ people don't really exist, and neither do men or women. They're all just figments of our imagination. So check that out on the links that I just mentioned here, or they're in the column, I should say. The links are in the column if you want to see that panel discussion right there. Because Gorsuch's I can't even speak today. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. Justice Gorsuch's opinion that he just affirmed defines LGBTQ people right out of existence. I know he's trying to help them, and maybe he is legally, but he's defined the rationale for such people out of existence. If everything's in your mind and not in any objective biology, then there's really no way to say someone is LGBTQ or man or woman. Okay, so we got these 3 casualties: we the people, women, and LGBTQ people. The 4th casualty is 96% of the population. Now, why do I say that? Look, you ask anyone in corporate America today this question: are you more likely to experience problems at work for supporting LGBTQ political goals or opposing them? What do you think the answer is? It's not even close. I personally found this out back in 2011. This is 9 years ago. I wrote a book called Correct Not Politically Correct, How Same-Sex Marriage Hurts Everyone. Never brought it up at work, but somebody at Cisco, who I was doing some training for at the time, and Bank of America as well, found out about it, and I was fired immediately as a consultant. You can read all about it. I have a column at crossexamined.org called Sex at Work. Do not Google that. Go to crossexamine.org and type it in the search engine. Do not Google sex at work. Go to crossexamine.org, type it in the search engine, and you'll find the article as to what happened. I don't have time to get into it now. Some of you already know. But it's also linked in this current column. The truth is that HR departments in corporate America are proponents of everything LGBTQ. And for those who identify as such, these folks are actually better off than their straight counterparts, because LGBTQ households on average earn more than traditional households, and gay men earn 10% more than straight men. Now, there are some individual exceptions. That's why this case rose to the Supreme Court. Somebody was claiming discrimination. But there appears to be no systematic discrimination, no systematic problem of anti-LGBTQ bias in the workplace. To the contrary, it's the opposite. LGBTQ people are celebrated. They don't need special treatment. It's maybe the people that oppose them that do. Yet this court's decision will employ the strong arm of government to fix a problem that doesn't exist. The decision is going to force companies to give employment preference to a long list of sexual orientations that at best 4% of the people claim. And that 4% already has a financial advantage. So anyone who claims an LGBTQ identity will now have more job security than John or Jane Doe. You say, how so? Because if a company, say, has to downsize, who are they going to let go? One of the helpless does, or a person of a newly preferenced minority who can bring a costly lawsuit alleging discrimination? Who are they going to let go? They're not going to let go the person that can sue them. They're going to let go John or Jane Doe. So this is actually just resulting in reverse discrimination. Now, reverse discrimination is not the intent of this decision, but it's the inevitable consequence. As soon as you give preferential treatment to one group of people, you are automatically disadvantaging anyone not part of that group. Not only that, there isn't any medical consensus as to what sexual orientation or transgenderism is. But the effect of this decision is that businesses, and maybe even ministries, we'll see, reference to those who identify with a long list of special genders: ambigender, bigender, blur gender, call gender, conflict gender, cosmic gender, etc., etc., etc. I don't even know what these mean. Most people don't know what they mean. Well, there's no objective of definition for any of these things. That's the whole point. It's all just made up in your mind. Now, how is it all? But what does Facebook have? 59 such genders, and now you can even customize. Maybe they have more now. I don't know. That was a couple of years ago. They came up with 59. How is it possible for a business owner to even know you're in compliance if you can't define what compliance is? And how many young workers are going to simply claim one of these nebulous labels just to get an advantage? Yeah, I'm pangender. You can't discriminate against me. I'm gender spiral. You can't discriminate against me. You can discriminate against him or her because they don't claim one of those labels. Look, these claims for special treatment can't be objectively disproven. Like Elizabeth Warren's claim to be a Native American. You could objectively disprove that. You could do a blood test, which they did. She's not Native American. But you can't do a blood test for gender fluid. Because if your gender is just in your mind, then there's no objective way of discovering what somebody is. There's no objective way of discovering whether somebody's just saying that to get an advantage or they really are that. The bottom line is this decision doesn't fix an existing workplace problem. Actually, LGBTQ folks are doing very well. Thankfully, I don't want anyone to do poorly. They're doing well in the workplace. Instead, this decision creates legal and administrative chaos, and it legally justifies reverse discrimination against an already underperforming 96% of the population. Now, that's anything but equality, ladies and gentlemen. That's That's not equality. That's giving a very small minority who can't even be defined except by what they think an advantage over 96% of the population. Now, maybe we're going to have probably it'll be more than 4% now claiming one of these genders because they're going to get an advantage over it. But still, most of the population is going to be disadvantaged because of this. That's not equality. I think I saw a Babylon Bee headline. Babylon Bee, our friends at the Babylon Bee, always keeping things light and giving us a chuckle when we need it. I don't have it in front of me, but it said something like this: Trump claims to be gay and transgendered, so he can't be fired. Something like that. I mean, now there's truth in that, right? Obviously, he's elected, but if he was in the workplace, that would be a shield for you to say, "Oh, you can't fire me." And by the way, this actually makes the Civil Rights Act less effective for blacks. I didn't have time to put this in the column because I'm running out of room. Less effective for blacks, the very people the civil rights legislation was trying to protect, because now you have even a smaller minority protected over African Americans, the LGBTQ people. So it's actually destroying the reason the Civil Rights Act was put into place to begin with, or at least making it weaker. All right, I'm Frank Turk.
All right. Now, we could listen to more of that, but I at least wanted to give you kind of an idea of some of the things people are saying in regards to the Supreme Court decision. Here is the issue, and let me just make it as simple as possible. You can talk about all the things this could do. You could talk about all the chaos this could cause. The main thing to realize is we've reached a level as a society where we cannot define what sex is anymore by biology, anatomy, or genetic makeup. It's now based off what someone decides they are, and what they decide they are. They get the access and the benefits that would be given to someone of that sex, and then they can do whatever they want as that sex, even though they're not actually that sex, because genetically, biologically, and anatomy, they're not that. And this is going to create chaos. And I'm telling you, it's going to continue to create chaos. Probably the one area we're going to be able to watch it, which is I think we'll get the most immediate pushback, is going to be in the area of sports. You're a guy. Hey, I feel like I'm a girl. You go over to the women's track team. You destroy the women's track team. You win all the medals. You win all the awards. You win all the scholarships. And the women get messed over. There's going to be pushback on that. And then how far does that go? You have a man who decides that he's a woman, and in something like the UFC, cage fighting, he comes in there, and then let's say he actually hurts a woman horribly hurts her. Now at this point, the UFC doesn't have a policy to allow that, but how long can they do that before someone can claim discrimination? Boxing? Here's a man. He decides he wants to fight. He wants to be a boxer in the women category, and he goes in there and he knocks a woman unconscious. Is someone going to say? And if you say, "Well, no, you can't do that," is that not discrimination? Like, how far does this go? This is opening the door, and the fundamental issue is that right there. So I just want at least to let you hear that. Now, we've been over an hour. We've looked at a lot of things. I'll just give you some breaking news that I just got. We listened to a clip from the Inside Story about Egypt, Turkey, and Libya. Well, it seems like some southern Yemen separatist, I should say, some southern Yemen separatist has seized the island of Socotra. Socotra. It's the latest flashpoint in Yemen's 5-year civil war, and it's a remote island in the Arabian Sea. So Socotra is a remote island in the Arabian Sea, and it looks like southern Yemen separatists have seized the island of Socotra. Now, I don't know how significant that is. I'm not even familiar with this remote island in the Arabian Sea known as Socotra. You may want to try to find it on a map, look it up on Google Earth. But some Yemen separatists, southern Yemen separatists, have seized the island. So that's interesting. That just popped up in one of my podcast feeds. I want to listen to it, but there's always things happening in the world. And I wanted to play some more audio and talk about some more things going on. But that's the goal of this to try to figure out where, not just to try to figure out, I'm not asking questions, where are we? But I am saying this is where we are. And that is where we are as of today, as of right now. And so it's almost 12:30 p.m. Central Time. By 3 p.m. Central Time, we'll be somewhere else because things are moving and they're moving rapidly. And I want to end with this. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13. I want to start in verse 11. Romans chapter 13, verse 11. And that, knowing the time that now is, and I'll read this again. Romans chapter 13, verse 11. And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. We need to wake up. Our salvation is nearer now than when you believed. You need to wake up right now. The night is far spent. Romans 13, verse 12. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Wake up. Understand the times. And now you have at least an idea, at least a little bit, of where we are June the 22nd, 2020 at 12:31 p.m. Central Time. You can contact me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Everyone have a great day. God bless.